lugha ya Kiswahili kwa wageni, na pia ni ambassador wa Kiswahili, nikimaanisha si lugha tu bali na utamaduni wake. Asante.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for joining me and us together here. My name is Lulu Khalef, and I'm a visual artist based in Mombasa, Kenya. And I'm also founder and creative director of the Pwani Club, a brand that primarily focuses on upholding, observing, and preserving the Swahili culture. Yeah, that's it.
Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Abdulrahman Ndegwa. I lead the Heritage Department at Swahilipot Hub. And other than that, I work in translation, working between English and Kiswahili. Thank you.
Greetings once again, Albert Mwamburi. Mimi ni mwandishi, lakini niliambiwa nijieleze kama digital archivist. Because what I do is document oral history on my platform called Pwani Tribune. Santeni.
Can I have one of the technicians just sort the second mic to ensure smooth conversation? Thank you. Simiyu, can Wairimu please introduce yourself?
My name is Wairimu Nduba, and I represent my organization.
in that. So we'd like to understand what is the challenge and where this disconnect has been. Why is it that there is a huge mismatch or a huge gap between the older generation in terms of cultural preservation and the value that it holds and the current young generation? We have a lot of young people in this stage, and these young people are in the heritage space. So we'd like to understand heritage from a young person's perspective and not from just the books that we read that were actually written in the 17th or 18th century. And for that, I would channel the first question to Wairimu. I hope you can hear me. So Wairimu, young people rarely find value in visiting museums. As an organization, we are housed by the National Museum of Kenya. It is right next to us, and I can 100% tell you, we only have 10% of the young people that often visit Fort Jesus as a museum. So with that in point of reference, why are young people rarely visiting the museum? What could be the challenge? And how do we define value in terms of that? Wairimu? Wairimu is...
a blanket. You're eating it, you're cooking, there's a sense of an embodied experience with this. And I feel like sometimes with museums, as young people, you enter into this space and you feel very alienated. Yeah, so I think that's that. That's the answer to the first question that you asked.
Thank you very much. I know we have a sound issue and the audience is not able to hear Wairimu, but just in summary, Wairimu talks about So in summary, Wairimu talks about her experience working in the museum. And she mentions how that is not very youth-friendly. It is not a place that a young person would actually feel connected to or defined with. And the question that we ask is, why is that the case? When a lot of things have been able to change over time, when a lot of sectors, whether it is transport, it is manufacturing, has been able to change over time, what is it that is not able to change, or what is it that would make heritage or the museums more connected and have young people have the urge to learn, preserve, and even commercialize this space? And for that, I would ask to ask a question in relations to the value, and this question goes to Lulu. How do we define value in relations to heritage?
I think personally, because I can only speak from my experience, is the only way that I saw value in my heritage and my culture is, first of all, through acceptance, and second of all, being able to identify that I am a Swahili individual. You get what I mean? Y'all get what I mean? Yeah. So in order to put a value in something, you must, I don't know, have this sense of, again, I'm going back to the word of pride because it's very important to me. So I had like this sort of pride in my culture, in my heritage. That's why I value it so much. That's why I walk the way I walk, and that's why, well, I'm speaking the white man's language now, but hopefully, you know, I can hold a whole conversation in Swahili without you guys laughing at me. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Still on the question of value, I'm not sure.
No, just take the mic.
I'll just do this instead. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get rid of it. Still on the questions of value, a question to you, Nyanjala. How does each generation define value? Because there has been a different definition of the older generation, and this is a new current generation. And being in the heritage space, especially in Tanga, which is a town that we know that has been able to really preserve, promote their culture. So how do we define in terms of the intergenerational differences?
Asante. Tunapoongelea thamani ya kitu ni kupata, you call it a sense of belonging, identity, utambulisho na kumiliki au kumilikishwa kuwa sehemu husika. Kwa mfano jina langu tu, Nyanjala Maingu. Ninaposema kila mtu lazima atajiuliza huyu mtu anatokea wapi. Kwa hiyo na mimi nikisimama kama generation ya sasa hivi, I'm proud to say kwamba mimi ni mtoto wa fulani, kwa sababu Maingu, it carries the value of my family. Nikitoka hapo naingia kwenye kabila langu, lakini nikitoka hapo mimi ni Mtanzania. Ninapofika kwenye Utanzania, ninajivunia kuongea Kiswahili bila kuchanganya kwa Kiingereza. Hilo ni jambo kubwa ambalo limeleta mkanganyiko kati ya jamii iliyopita na ya sasa. Jamii iliyopita waliongea lugha za kwao na wakaongea Kiswahili. Walioongea Kiswahili walikuwa ni wale waliopata elimu na kuweza kufanya kazi katika ofisi za serikali. Inamaanisha walikuwa katika idara rasmi. Lakini walioongea lugha za kwao walijivunia
And how we define it when we give an introduction to each other. Still on top of that, I would like to extend this question to Abdulrahman. How can we promote young people to start appreciating culture and value? There's a lot of modernization that is currently happening. There's a lot of young people that would rather define themselves with the Western culture as compared to preserving, learning, and promoting their own cultural identity that they were bought and bred in. What is the challenge and how would we be able to practice?
Okay. Thank you so much for the question. And to answer that, I'll have to go back to the question that Wairimu was answering.
And I think that is where major problem with how young people interpret heritage and how heritage is integrated in everything that they do is the fact that we no longer visit museums, we the young people, and that is a major issue. And perhaps the reason why we don't visit museums is because we don't see any connection and any value in these museums. And the fact is, and it's sad to imagine that African museums, or rather museums in Africa, are still colonial legacies. And we're moving on. You know, the world is changing really fast, right? And the young people of today do not find any connection to the artifacts in the museums. You know, so yesterday we were having a conversation with a Tanzanian counterpart. I think Leon is here, and we were addressing the same issue: why young people sort of like misinterpret or don't really understand heritage, and why they're not really engaged in it as well. And what you're talking about is these young people, when they visit a museum, hakuna jambo ambalo they cannot connect to anything there. So what if we are to build a museum for the young people? You know, everyone here, these young people. And the example you're taking into consideration is how music in Tanzania has evolved. You know, Makamba nimefikia, like Bongo Flava, the history of Bongo Flava. And we go way back, and yesterday you were mentioning City, which is from Zanzibar, and the history of Tarab. You know, and how Tarab up to now has evolved. The same way Bongo Flava has. You know, how the music that we listen to right now from Diamond and Zuchu and the rest, it's different. You know, it's really changed a lot. So what if we have a museum space that these young people can connect to this history of the music? You know, me as a young person, 23 years old, for instance, I'm a musician. You know,
is that an example or you actually?
I wish I was. But I mean, I'm just trying to imagine that I'm 23 years old today. I'm a musician. I look up to Zuchu, I look up to Diamond, I look up to other people, you know. And I find somewhere where there's a history of East African music, you know, a discography of sorts. And I'm able to situate myself in this history. And that sort of gives me an identity that, you know, connects me to my heritage and the people who've, you know, who've blazed the trail before us.
Thank you. That's a very interesting aspect. You know, for a long time when we talk about heritage, we just think about museums and artifacts. But he's talking about heritage in terms of the practices, in terms of music, in terms of every aspect of entertainment. And in that, there's a huge form of storytelling that is usually told, whether it is in terms of visual arts, it is in terms of performing arts, or it is in terms of whatever stories that we'd like to tell. Even during those eras where we had our grandparents tell us various stories, that was a form of heritage that was passed down to us. So clearly, it shows that storytelling plays a very critical component in ensuring that we have our culture preserved and promoted. And we have Albert in the panel here today who's a storyteller. In your own experience and capacity, can you tell us how promoting and telling the story of heritage plays a critical role in conservation and ensuring that young people learn about it and are able to experience it as well?
Okay, thank you. I like to consider us all storytellers. Most of this crowd is African, and by that I mean we are orally founded. Our ancestors relayed culture, their history, through storytelling. And the first, I think as youth, we are the first generation best placed to tell our stories the right way. When I consider the first documenters of our history, who are mostly, say, missionaries in the 19th century, they started documenting things from a point of either a bit of misunderstanding or a bit of bias, because you can't wholly explain something you are not part of or you cannot fully experience. So it's a challenge, I can't deny that most people say we've lost that art, but we haven't lost it. We just have to tap into that heritage bit of it, because there are a lot of content creators here. Content creation is storytelling, but through other media. What we need to do is to tap those gifts those abilities, that approachability or online approachability, and tap it or merge it to heritage. And the point Abdulrahman raised, that most young people don't visit museums. But maybe it's because they consider those as areas that don't accommodate them. And we have to consider what the youth want, and what they're comfortable with, and what they're gifted with. Imagine the museums having Wi-Fi and allowing the youth moving around and documenting the experience, as most content creators do here. That already is one way of getting things better from where we are now. I believe that it's not a matter of totally disinterest, but we've not accommodated the youth enough. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very interesting point that is actually brought on board. The young people need to feel connected, and for them to feel connected, there has to be things that they're able to identify, there has to be things that they're able to relate with. Unfortunately, most of the museums that we have, not just in Kenya, but actually in Africa, are just focused on the original preservation and how they are. It doesn't necessarily have to be changing it, but it could be how do we integrate and ensure the authenticity of that culture, the authenticity of that piece, whether it is an artifact or anything, but at the same time, the way the story is told is something that has a modern integration that can relate with the young people. And for that, you know, the only way to have young people being interested in something is when there's a monetary value that is attached to it. Young people in the room, is that right or wrong? The only way to entice you to heritage is when we show you that there's money that you can be able to earn from that seal, right? We understand our economic times, and when we're able to show how heritage conservation is able to create a ripple effect in our economy, then that is what would actually be able to entice it. Espera is back online. Can you please...
The history of it, talk about the social value of heritage, talk about the for development of this continent, then the aspect of economy based on heritage is become very important. Because we think that when we talk about economic it refers to the monetary worth or potential economic benefits. Can we proceed? Promotion of heritage. We know so many professionals getting so many degrees and protecting and promoting our site. How those sites can reveal to be a source of employment for young people. So in heritage, we have an employment opportunity for young people. It means it is sites offer or can even create jobs directly within a site to guide maintenance, staff, administration, and indirectly it's like in hospitality, travel, and retail that can serve students. Can you please confirm that you can tell me clearly because the sound system is not good from my side.
Thank you, Espera. So Espera is the program manager of Youth Heritage Africa. He is based in ICCROM, and we know Italy has one of the countries that have had a very strong and cultural preservation. So what ICCROM as an international entity body that deals with heritage preservation, what they're trying to do is ensure that as African countries that have rich culture are able to more or less do the same thing. And they are establishing Youth Heritage Africa, and Kenya being one of the countries that are actually part of this initiative. And that program is going to be anchored here in Swahilipot Hub Foundation called Kenya Heritage Hub. Basically, it is looking at the economic opportunities that are in relations to heritage. What is it that we need to do? Is it in terms of skilling? Is it in terms of infusing the modern bit to the culture and heritage experience? But it's basically just trying to understand what is heritage and how we do commercialize heritage. A number of people that are sitting on this panel are businessmen or have been able to earn through heritage. With that experience, I would like to take it back to Lulu to tell us, how can we commercialize heritage? How complex is it when you talk about commercializing and monetizing heritage, values, and our cultural experiences?
Should I talk about my experience? Okay. So the reason why the Pwani Club was even founded was because growing up, not even growing up, but I would hear things like, wait, what's your Swahili? Was Swahili, they're lazy people, or Swahili, or people, and they're illiterate. So I wanted to remove that negative connotation that was attached to being Swahili. And that's why the Pwani Club was born. And in all honesty, it's a good experience because it's what, bread butters my bread. But it's tough because the people that I kind of did this for, the Swahili people, they don't see the value in what I am doing. So namweleza mtu anambia, Lulu wafanya kazi gani? Namwambia, oh, this is what I do. Bado mtu yakwambia, kumbe wapenda vitu vya zamani. So you get what I mean? Like, people don't see a value. Again, back to when we started the conversation, if you don't have pride in it, you can't have value. And if there's no value, you cannot monetize it. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, that's very true. Thank you very much, Lulu. Considering we have someone from Tanzania, we'd like to understand if that is the same experience from the young people of Tanga or just Tanzania in general. Is that the same thing? You were very passionate about Swahili as a culture. Is that just you as an individual, or it's rather a representation of most of the people in your community? And how is it different that the Kenyan young people have had a huge disconnect with Swahili as a culture and mostly do not want to associate themselves with it? And why is it that in your country, that's more or less a different experience?
Asante. Kuna msemo maarufu unasema Kiswahili kilizaliwa Tanzania. Mlishausikia? Mlishausikia msemo? Kikakulia Kenya, kikafia wapi? Uganda. Hivi ni kweli? Tanzania ninaweza nikasema hali inabadilika, ambapo hapo nyuma kwa vijana ilikuwa wanafurahia au wanaona ufahari kuongea lugha ya kigeni, lakini wanaitumia ile lugha wakiwa mashuleni. Wanaporudi majumbani wanaongea lugha za kikabila. Na Tanzania ni nchi ambayo ina zaidi ya makabila 100. Inamaanisha hapo ni tamaduni tofauti tofauti. Lakini Kiswahili ndicho kinachotufanya tunakuwa pamoja. Mimi si mzaliwa wa Tanga, lakini sasa hivi ni zaidi ya waliozaliwa Tanga. Unapofika pwani ya Tanga, maisha ya watu wa Tanga ni ya Kiswahili. Yaani ni ya Kiswahili ambayo huwezi kukimbia. Unataka hutaki. Siku ya Ijumaa kila nyumba inanukia pilau. Siku ya Ijumaa kila mwanamama au binti amejitanda mtandio. Yaani ni Ijumaa hiyo. Yaani kila mtu anahakikisha mpaka makazini. Na wababa watapiga kanzu na sendo mpaka ilikataliwa na serikali. Rais akasema hapana, hatuwezi kwenda hivi. Lakini hiyo ni hali inaonyesha ni namna gani tunakumbatia hali ya kwamba tunaishi pwani ya Tanga. Lakini zaidi ya hayo, kila mtu unayekutana naye atakusalimu assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ni Muislamu, si Muislamu, atakusalimia. Kwa hiyo kutokana na swali lako, tunabadilika kwa asilimia kubwa, kwa sababu tumefika mahali hasa kundi kubwa la vijana tumetafuta kipi kinatutambulisha. Hakuna. Na ndio maana sasa hivi kuna wimbi kubwa la vijana kujitambulisha kwa majina ya koo zao. Huwa tunataniana, kwa mfano watu wa kabila la Wadigo, kama mko hapa mtanisamehe, unaambiwa we mwana wa nani wewe? Utasema wa Omar. Omari nani? Yaani hayo ni maneno ambayo vijana hutumia hasa kwenye masherehe. Wanataniana tu vijana ambao ni lika moja. Kwa hiyo tunaukumbatia utamaduni wetu kwa kasi ya 5G. Rukiya, tumebadilika. Na ninaomba Mombasa pia iwe hivyo. Asante.
Nyanjala ametuuliza swali, ni vipi unakumbatia Uswahili? And I know our Kenyan people, if there is no money, it is very hard for us to actually do that. And for us to understand how we can actually commercialize that, the CEO of Konza, when he was on stage, he actually talked about the support to Swahilipot in providing 50 computers. And considering we're a heritage space and we're having conversation kuhusu heritage, how can we use some of these devices that are actually very presently available to us in cultural promotion, preservation, and raising the economic value to it? Because as we understand, tourism plays a very critical role in the coastal economy, and heritage plays a very critical role in driving this economy. So I would like to pose this question to Wairimu online. How can we integrate digital integration in heritage and ensure that it connects with young people?
I think
In the same channel of economy, the fashion industry in Mali is taking a lot from the Gola family. And at the same time, doing this production of Gola family and promoting tourism as well, and then develop a group of that particular craft. I don't know if I cannot. It sounds like I'm sorry, Rukiya.
Thank you very much, Espera. Espera was talking about how the best practices of cultural or heritage preservation and integration in other countries has been able to create a ripple effect in their economy. It is not just about the museum, it is about the food, it is about the clothes, it is about the language that we speak, right? I'm just going to give a very small example. There is food that we normally cook here, and Nyanjala said every Friday, ukipita katika nyumba yote ya Mswahili, ni pilau ndo inanukia, si ndio? So because these are things that we practice every day, we always overlook them. But then I'll tell you for free. If you go to Nairobi, I lived in Western Kenya, and the pilau there is not the same pilau as pilau here. It is very different. So this is a different experience that we have. It could be the same pilau, but in different countries, different regions, they do it differently. Because there's a cultural integration that is related to it, and the people that are earning very good money out of that. Not just in cooking, but it could even be in the experience of learning how to cook pilau. There is the fashion industry that have been able to make very good money in that. If you look at this space here today, the artifacts that you see around here are a component of heritage. If you look at some of these furniture pieces, this is heritage. If you look at the carpet that is there, all of it is an integration of heritage. So there's a socio-economic value that is attached to it, and most of it is right before us. But because we see it, we practice it every day, we normally do not see the value because we are used to it. And today we are told, let us value, let us define whatever that we have, let us define our culture and hold it very dearly and see how best we can be able to commercialize it and actually embrace by promoting and enhancing our cultural identities. I'd like to wrap up this panel discussion here today. And with that, I'd like every panelist to just give a 1-minute parting shot of what you'd like to tell young people, especially by enticing them to be in the heritage space.
Mimi ningependa kila kijana aliyoko hapa kuhusiana na urithi wetu sisi kama vijana ambao tumebahatika kupata huu utajiri kutoka kwa wazazi wetu kwa kuzaliwa na ni bahati. Kwanza ni kutumia lugha ya Kiswahili. Tutumie lugha ya Kiswahili kwenye kila kitu ambacho tungependa kitu pambanue au kitu tambulishi. Na ningependa pia tubadilishane mawazo kwa lugha ya Kiswahili, kwa sababu sasa hivi Kiswahili si tu cha Afrika Mashariki, bali Kiswahili kinaongelewa bara zima la Afrika. Na mtu yoyote nimeona kuna vipaji tofauti tofauti, anaweza akaja na ubunifu ambao ukaleta pesa nyingi kwa ajili kutokana na lugha ya Kiswahili. Kwa mfano, kuna wasanii Tanga wanatumia ngoma au mziki ule wa kale, lakini wameuwekea mahadhi ya sasa na wanapata hela. Kwa mfano Kivurunde anayeimba mahadhi ya kibao kata. Tunaye Kasimu Mganga anayeimba mahadhi ya bongo flavor. Tunaye Roma Mkatoliki na Mwana FA anaimba hip hop, lakini bado anawasilisha tamaduni za Mswahili. Tunaye Lailat Athman anahani mashairi na yuko kati yetu hapa. Pia anawakilisha utamaduni wa Mswahili. Hilo ni la kwanza. La pili, tunaomba vijana tuweze kuwasapoti wale wajasiriamali wadogo wadogo kwa kununua bidhaa zao. Kuwa na fahari kuvaa kitu anachokitengeneza Lulu hapa. Embu muulize maswali na kesho nenda mahali kielezee kwamba hiki nimenunua kutoka kwa mtu ambaye anaitwa Lulu na ni kitu cha aina fulani. Hembu kuwa na fahari kuwa volunteer au kufanya kazi Swahilipot. Kwa maana utakutana na marafiki wengi na watu wenye ujuzi tofauti tofauti, wanatoka huko lakini wanakuja hapa kuona kwamba Mombasa kuna nini cha tofauti. Hebu turudi majumbani kwetu huko, na badala ya kusema hapa mbona hakuna mopa, basi tuchukue yale madekio tufanye kwa mikono yetu. Tupende kuvaa kanga, tupende kuvaa baibui za ukaya. Kwa mambo hayo urithi wetu hautapotea, ila tusisite kukumbatia yale yanayotupeleka mbele, nikimaanisha modernity. Asante.
With me, I would like to tell the local community kwamba lazima ujivunie, because at the end of the day, we have to be our own authors to our own stories, kind of what Pwani Tribune is doing, telling stories of the coastal people, by the coastal people, for the coastal people. I can give you a quick example. How many of you know the garment called kikoe? Okay, fabulous. All of you know it. I can guarantee you right now, if you go on your phone and Google kikoe, a garment that originated in East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania to be specific, if you Google it and look at the images, you're just seeing foreigners because they monetized your products in Amunkatu hapa. So you gotta wake up and monetize your products, monetize your culture. And not only just monetize, money is not everything. We shouldn't have this capitalistic idea. But be proud of who you are and where you stand and how you want to move from point A to point B in life. And with the policymakers as well, the National Museums of Kenya, I think most people see museums as like a tourist thing. Watalii peke yake ndo wanaenda museums. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you, like I've only been in Fort Jesus twice. The reason being, it's very archaic. It does not accommodate young people. It just does not make space for young people. Can we focus, wait, who am I talking to? National Museums of Kenya, please, wherever you are. I just want you to put so much effort and investment in your, let's start by lighting. How our place looks is going to appeal people, and especially young people. Let's have a modern art museum. There's so many artists, not only just drawing, but very many crafts that can be practiced and that should be showcased. We do not have to hold this archaic idea of museums being boring. So yeah, let's play.
Nyanjala, thank you so much for encouraging us to embrace our language. And at Swahilipot, we've set aside Friday is the day we speak in Kiswahili, our emails, messages, and everything. We are a work in progress, lakini tunafika hapo pole pole tu, inshallah. First, I'd like to express my gratitude to the chief mentor. Mimi namuita Sheikh Mahmoud. Sheikh in Arabic is a term of respect and adoration. Sote tumuita mentor, lakini mimi napenda kumuita Sheikh Mahmoud. And he's enabled us collectively, and even as the Heritage Department, to try and come up and curate, or rather make this space as the home of contemporary heritage. Make Swahilipot the home of contemporary heritage. And contemporary is modern. And I'm really glad that Lulu has mentioned having spaces that represent modern art, because this is something that in our spaces, it is lacking. But to conclude, what I'd like to say, especially to